I was asked to house sit a few years back for my good friend Paul. He and his family were going to Disney World on vacation for 5 days, and he wanted me to stay there and feed their pets, and just make sure everything was cool while they were gone. I was unemployed, and he offered me $200. I really needed the money, so I agreed to do it. The first couple of days were fine, fun, and relaxing as a matter of fact. They had a hot tub that I took advantage of, and their 2 dogs were really awesome. On my 3rd night there, however, things started to get weird. I made a sandwich for dinner and left everything on the counter, or so I thought. About an hour later, I returned to the kitchen counter to grab a beer and put everything away, and I noticed the bread was already put up, and the mustard and mayonnaise were also already back in the fridge. I wasn't positive that I didn't put everything away, but I was pretty sure. I brushed it off and fell asleep watching TV. The next day I woke up and the TV was off. Not just the TV though, all the lights in the room, the TV and the speakers too. I was officially weirded out by this point and thought they might have had a ghost or something. Again I brushed it off. The rest of the day everything was cool. Nothing weird happened. Then, the next day, I went to the store, and when I came back I decided to get back in the hot tub. A while later I got out and realized my towel that I had left hanging on the hook on the deck was gone. I went inside, dripping all over the place, and found my towel in the master bathroom, flung over the side of the shower. I knew for sure I had not put the towel there, and I called Paul to ask him if he was used to weird shit like this happening in his house, and if they might have had a ghost. He told me no, that they hadn't experienced anything weird. He then told me to ask John. I asked who John was, and his answer confused me. He said it was his brother-in-law. I told him his brother-in-law has not come by since I'd been there. His response gave me goosebumps. He said John lives there with us. I was so freaked out that I tuned out everything else he said to me and finally said back to him, "I have not seen him one time. Why would you ask me to house sit if he was here too?" He then said John was disabled and he couldn't drive a car or get around the house easily. After hearing that, I told him again I haven't seen him once and that I was so freaked out I was gonna leave. He tried to keep talking to me, but I hung up and ran to start gathering my clothes and whatnot. I was on edge, and a few minutes later I had all my things and bolted out of that house. Paul called me 2 days later and told me John said he never saw me either. A few years ago, I was home alone at night. I was watching TV in the living room when I heard the doorbell ring. Whenever I hear the doorbell ring, especially when I'm home alone, I am very cautious to answer it. I walked up to the peephole without turning on the porch light, so they don't know if anyone is actually home or not, and I looked through it. It was really dark, but I can see a small figure, more like a black blob. I don't know its definite shape, and had to be around 3 to 4 feet, doing like a dancing motion, dipping down and oscillating its arms outward. Think of a person moving their arms like wings gracefully. It was dark outside, but this figure was darker, so I could see this going on. After a few seconds I stopped looking through the peephole because it was too freaky to look at. I regained some courage and looked back through it, and whatever it was gone. To this day, I still don't know what that was, and I get freaked out just thinking about it. I'll give you some backstory before I begin. I am 21 years old now, but when this happened, I was only 14. I was home alone. I don't remember why, but I do remember I was on the phone with my friend when downstairs I heard a noise. Confused, I got up from my bed and creaked my bedroom door open. I told my friend to hold on, and I yelled down the stairs, "Guys?" I was assuming I would hear them respond, but I didn't. I didn't hear a thing. I did hear my dog growling downstairs, and thought that's what I must have heard the first time, although it always made me scared when I would hear her growl. It put me on edge. I felt comfort though because my friend was on the phone with me. I went downstairs and turned the corner into the kitchen. As I turned the corner, I saw the door to our basement close. It scared the shit out of me, and I froze where I was standing. My dog was growling outside, looking in at me, and started freaking out when she saw me and started jumping on the glass door. This didn't help and scared me even more. I ran over and let her inside, and she immediately ran to the basement door and started growling at it. That was all I needed to see, and was freaking out to my friend on the phone. I told her I was sure somebody was down there and I was gonna leave. I felt much better when I went outside onto the front lawn and saw my neighbor outside getting his mail. I went over to him, and it was weird because I have never spoke to him until then, and I told him I was sure somebody was in my house. He was very understanding, and he told me to come with him while he grabbed his phone and called my parents. I didn't know he had their number, but I was so glad he did. My mom believed me right away, but my dad took some convincing. I felt bad for ruining their night, but somebody was in our house. I was sure. I sat with my neighbor awkwardly on his front porch, staring at my house. While we waited, I saw the master bedroom light turn on. My neighbor and I flipped out, and he couldn't believe it. When my parents got home, my mom came over to us, and my dad and my neighbor slowly went inside the house. I think they were scared as hell, but neither one said so. They ended up not catching the person, and I was happy, because I was afraid of my dad getting hurt. My dad did say that he thinks he had just missed whoever it was. The back door was unlocked the whole time. It was so creepy. I never felt comfortable in that house after that, even when my parents were home. And still I get scared sometimes when I think too much about it. Hey, I'm new to the forum, but I have a really creepy story to share. Around 10 years ago or so, I was working as a pizza delivery driver. I had just turned 18, and it seemed like a good first job for me. So that you can understand the story and my experience better, just know that I am a female, and I'm on the petite side. So I hadn't been working at this pizza place very long before this happened. It was a Saturday night, around 11 o'clock. Why it is okay to have a petite young girl deliver pizzas at this time of night, I have no idea, but I was. I had one delivery to make, at an apartment complex a few miles up our main street. I figured this one would be quick, and I'd probably get a decent tip because I always seem to when delivering to this complex. I went to the apartment number listed on the receipt and knocked. A man answered the door. This man was tall, good-looking, with long brown hair that was kept and combed to the side. If I remember correctly, he was wearing blue jeans and a turtleneck long-sleeve shirt. When he answered, he seemed very happy to see me. He said hello and told me to hang on for a second and kinda closed the door in my face. I assumed he was getting the money when he opened it back up, and I saw another man now, standing near a bedroom door close by. The man had a big smile and was honestly pretty attractive. He asked me to come inside and set the pizza on the table. I looked at his hands, and he wasn't holding any money. I thought this seemed weird, and I didn't trust the situation. I told him I'd just wait here for the payment, and he insisted that I come inside to put the pizza on the table. I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't do that, and he said something like, "It's fine, I'll get your money, just come in and put it down." I told him I didn't feel comfortable entering people's houses and that it was against our policy anyway. He then stopped smiling and said, "Just come in." I felt scared now and told him I wasn't going in one last time. He then slammed the door in my face, and it scared me even more. I hurried back to my car and drove back to the store, The guy obviously didn't want the pizza. It was very frightening. I wish I could say I quit after that, but I didn't. And I even delivered pizza to that same complex a few more times before I started another job. Thank God I never saw that man or the other guy that was there again. Do you ever have the feeling when you're walking somewhere at night that the person behind you is following you? That happened to me, and not very long ago either. I was walking home from my friend Nicole's house. She only lived like 7 blocks down from my street, but we live in the downtown area of a huge city. I should have known better, but I do now. I was walking, and I could just feel that somebody was behind me at some point. I'm not sure how. Instinct, I guess. I turned around kinda to see who it was, and it was exactly what you don't want to see. A tall man, wearing dark clothes, with his hands in his hoodie pockets. I started picking up my pace because of the natural nervousness it brought me. I thought for sure he wasn't actually following me, but I started to hear his steps when I couldn't before. I turned again and saw that he was walking really fast behind me now, about 30 feet away. I became scared and paranoid and thought, should I actually start running? And after I heard his steps become much faster, I realized he had started running. So I did too. I turned around while running to see him full on sprinting at me. This damn near gave me heart failure. I ran faster and faster. He wasn't gaining speed on me, and I saw the sign of a liquor store fairly close. I heard his steps start to fade as I got closer to it, and I ran inside and up to the counter where the very concerned man that was working there was looking at me. I told him I was sorry, but I thought somebody was following me. I looked out the door, and the man never passed by. I called my boyfriend and told him what just happened to me, and he was pissed. He said he would come get me, and I stood there telling the man at the counter about it too. My boyfriend came in and he said nobody was outside the store. That proved to me that the guy was actually chasing me. I was remodeling a house about a year back down in Memphis. This couple that had hired me on had money, and they were expecting a baby when I first met them. The wife was pretty far along, and it turned out she went into labor only about a week into my work there. I showed up for work the morning after they had gone to the hospital, and the husband left me the key and told me to help myself to anything in their refrigerator, and they probably wouldn't be home for a couple days. So I was putting up drywall in their family room, listening to music. I was trying to keep busy when suddenly I heard something. It sounded like somebody hit a drum. I set the stuff I was holding down and turned down my radio. I didn't hear anything anymore, so I walked over to the foyer and peered down the hallway that led to the master bedroom. I'm not shy, so I hollered out, "Hello?" I got nothing back. Then I heard a door close down the hall. I was looking down the hall when I heard it, and to me it sounded like the door to the master bathroom had opened up. I said hello. Again I heard nothing. I went back to work, but only a few minutes later I was holding a full sheet of drywall, about to drill it up, when out of the corner of my eye I saw someone. I turned, but they had vanished. I heard them run down the hall. I pretty much dropped what I was holding and said hello again. I was breathing heavy now because I saw a person in the corner of my eye. I was certain. I walked over to the hallway again and looked down. I saw no one and heard nothing. I looked at my watch and it was 6:19. I told myself I was good for the day and walked back over to where I was working. I plugged in my drill charger and slid a battery into it, and I grabbed my keys on the counter and walked outside. I came back to their house the next morning and continued working. Before I did though, I walked down the hallway and checked the rooms. Nobody was there but me. Later on, I asked the husband when they got home who that might have been, and he said he had no idea, that nobody lived there but them. I'm certain I saw somebody in that house. So my wife and I were celebrating 5 years of marriage. We were staying in this nice hotel in Santa Cruz called the Dream Inn. It was September, so it wasn't too hot outside, and not cold either. It was perfect. One night we got back to our hotel from dinner. My wife got in the shower, and I was sitting on the balcony overlooking the ocean. I was drinking a beer and just enjoying the scenery. It was really cool. I could see the ocean from there, the wharf, and the boardwalk. As I was sitting there, a man walked over, and from underneath me he said, "Hey, your wife is gorgeous, sir. You better keep your eye on her." I took offense to this asshole approaching me and saying this, so I just said nothing back. He walked off, and I forgot about it. The next day we were walking along the wharf and saw a nice restaurant we wanted to eat lunch at. We went inside and sat down. I noticed soon after that one of the waiters was being creepy and kept making a point to look over to us as he walked by. My heart skipped a beat when I realized that the waiter was the same guy that was under my balcony the night before. I stared him down and he just smiled at me. It really angered me and, quite frankly, scared me. I told my wife about it and she agreed that we should eat somewhere else. We were only there for one more day and I didn't see that asshole again. But man, that was creepy. That guy must have been on a lunch break or something and followed us. I have no idea. Hey there. I have to share this with you guys. I think this story would qualify to be on here. I work for a pest management company. I want to remain anonymous and don't want to name my company, but it's a pretty big one in the US. I'm a termite guy, which means I do the really tough work. I have to crawl under houses and spray termite killer on the wooden beams that hold up the house, as well as drill holes in concrete and dig ditches along the perimeter of houses. Not too many scary things can happen, I guess, while doing this job. It's really tough work, but this one day, like 6 months back, I had the surprise of a lifetime. I was working at this really old, run-down place up in the hills in my state, and the woman who lived at the house was really nice. She was an older broad and just wanted her house saved before the termites literally ate the whole thing. So everything was going as it would normally, and I was going under the house in the crawl space to spray. As I was crawling though, I smelled something really foul. I thought to myself, this smells like nothing I've ever smelled, but it was really strong. Not strong enough to stop me though, or make me puke or anything, but man, I tell you, it was bad. I was crawling, spraying, and trying not to breathe too much because of the smell. As I crawled, I ran into a body. It was almost completely rotted, but there was still flesh I could see. It felt surreal, honestly. I couldn't believe I had stumbled onto it. It felt like winning the lottery of stumbling onto something so weird. The body was obviously put there, and I became aware that the nice woman I was working for might have committed murder and put this body there. From what I could tell, it was an adult, but I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. I actually called my boss from under the house, and he told me to get out right away and tell the homeowner. I got all detective on him and said I shouldn't tell her, and maybe our company should just call the cops. He said no and insisted that I tell her right then. I did, and she was shocked, asking if I was sure and all that. I told her I was pretty damn sure I had just found a rotting corpse under her house, and she called 911. I left the house without finishing my work, of course, and I wasn't able to find out if she had done it or what the hell the deal was with it all. I looked online, but never found a thing. Sometimes I feel like driving up there to see if her SUV is still parked there. It honestly wasn't too scary after it set in, but when I first saw the corpse, I swear it looked like the skeleton was looking right at me. I work at a pizza joint in Chicago, and I unfortunately have the shitty responsibility of delivering pizzas, usually on the weekends, and usually at night. I've asked my boss for day shifts, but she seems to ignore my requests and give me whatever shifts I don't want the most. I know being a pizza delivery man is somewhat of a dangerous job, but I never imagined anything like what happened to me a few months ago could actually happen. There is this one customer that always calls in and acts strange as hell on the phone. Sometimes he will just hang up on you. Sometimes he'll order pizzas normally, but make crazy sounds while he does, and then hang up. We've always thought this guy was just an idiot playing pranks. He would make really weird comments too, like, "I want to order a large pizza with pineapples, mustard, and your skin." I'll never forget that one. We usually just hang up on his ass now, and we always know it's him calling because his number is saved in our system. So he called again a few months ago and ordered a pizza normally. No bullshit, no weird comments or sounds, and gave his address too. I thought it would be interesting to finally deliver to this guy, and when I drove up to his house, it was something you'd see in a scary movie. An old as hell looking place right on the line where we don't deliver, not in the busy part of the city where most of our orders come in. The house looked like it was about 100 years old, and there were no lights on that I could see. I wasn't scared or anything, just looking forward to seeing what he looked like. When I went to the front door, I rang the bell, but it wasn't working, so I knocked. I realized I forgot the guy's soda and thought he'd give me shit for sure, or just freak out on me. Nobody answered right away, so I knocked again on this big door. He opened up after that second time. He was wearing this weird-looking mask around his mouth, only his mouth. His eyes were opened wide, and I told him how much the pizza was, and that I was sorry I forgot the drink. He looked down, I think, and then said, "It's okay," and then looked at me again. I stood there looking at him for like 5 seconds in silence when I got bored of his shit and told him the amount again. He said okay, and then asked me, "Has anyone ever attacked me before?" I told him no, and if they did, they'd be sorry. He then took off his mask that was covering his mouth, and he had big-ass scars all around his mouth. I have no idea what they were from, and can't even imagine what they might have been from, but he looked seriously messed up. He smiled at me, and his lips were all cracked. I noticed he wasn't about to hand me some money, so I told him I was leaving. I turned around and started walking down the steps, and he screamed at me and slammed the door. This bastard was crazy, and I don't think any of his shit was to be funny. That final scream he gave me was creepy as hell, even though I kind of expected him to do something like that. He has called several times since then, and we always just tell him now that he is on our no delivery list. He usually just screams and hangs up, or cusses out whoever is on the phone. Hello. I want to share a scary story that happened to me when I was 10 years old. It happened at my house in the middle of the night. I woke up to get some water as I usually did. I walked out of my bedroom and went down the stairs. My house was 2 stories, but really it was 3 if you count the set of stairs you have to climb to reach the front door and the back door. So this was my usual routine. I would wake up somewhere around 2 a.m. and go downstairs to get water. I would stand in the kitchen and drink while looking out the back window and down at our backyard. I always did this and would imagine how scary it would be if I saw somebody back there. This one night, I did see someone back there. As I was drinking my water, I saw a figure standing against the fence in the back of the yard. I didn't know what they were doing or if they were looking at me, but they were dressed in all black. I stood there frozen with fear until the person started moving. They started walking nonchalantly across my backyard. It was terrifying to see. They were walking over to the wooden steps to get to the back door. I ducked down and ran back up the stairs as fast as I could. I tried opening my dad's bedroom door, but it was locked. I knocked and knocked. It took forever for him to finally say, "Yeah." I tried whispering that somebody was in our backyard, but also loud enough to where he could hear me. Nothing happened, so I repeated myself a little bit louder. He finally opened the door and I started crying. I told him I saw a person in our backyard. He told me to go in his room and I did, while he went down the stairs. I waited for a minute and couldn't handle it, so I left his room and slowly started going down the stairs again. Before I could reach the bottom, he turned the corner and scared me, saying nobody was back there. I told him I saw somebody for sure walking towards the door, and he went back over to the kitchen to look out the window. We both looked out and saw nothing, saw nobody. After him asking me numerous times if I was sure, he called the police. They arrived pretty fast, and they checked our backyard, the front yard, everywhere, but didn't find anyone. We went back to sleep and nothing else happened. For some reason, the person didn't try to enter our house. I'll never forget seeing that person back there though, and I still can't look out my windows at night.